So, welcome to the Real Estate Life podcast. So, on this podcast, we are dedicated to creating a life of passive income through real estate and doing something that we love along the way. Today, I'm excited. Today, I have Chris Weiser. Chris Weiser is a partner of mine and one of the deals that we have together in Ohio. And I wanted to bring him onto the show because he is a true passive investor, and he's going to give the listeners a perspective from the other side that they have not heard before. Chris has a business in agricultural leadership development with Texas A&M University. He's been working as a recruiter to help professionals in the IT industry achieve their career goals over the past 13 years. His career has allowed him to build a relationship with a wide variety of people from all over the world, and he's been able to explore different types of investment opportunities, and he's landed in the investment opportunities of multifamily real estate. Chris has been as an active passive investor since 2012 in multifamilies. So he's very experienced as a passive investor. If there's someone you want to get advice from as a passive investor and a different perspective, he is the person to talk to. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Abiel. That was a great intro. I wasn't going to pay you. You didn't have to pay you anything, but I was going to, maybe I'll slip you $5 after all those kind of words now.
Yeah. Chris, I left out the part in the intro of how many doors you're passively invested in. So Chris is currently invested in 1,768 doors as a passive investor. That is, if anyone that's in the business, that's a lot of doors. Chris, how many properties is that in general?
I think that is about 9 or 10 properties total.
Got it.
Yeah, they're scattered throughout Texas, Indiana, and Ohio.
Got it. Texas is your backyard. That's where you started. That's where this all began.
Pretty much, yeah. So when I took this job and I had a lot of debt as my current W-2 job. I had a lot of debt. So my first goal was to get out of debt. And once I got out of debt, then I started having another problem, which was a little bit of extra money. And I was way behind on my savings goals. So I started kind of looking into what options that I had outside of the stock market. And I ended up joining a mentorship group, and I met some folks at this mentorship group, and we started talking about single family homes primarily. But at one point they broke off and said, "Hey, Chris, we're going to, attack a multifamily deal. Would you be interested in joining us?" And I said, "Sure. What the heck is that?" And then 30 pages of red flags of what could possibly go wrong, and probably the biggest check I've written in my life at that time. We were on the road to passive investing.
Now, what size? What was the size of this deal? How big was his apartment?
I think that one was around 90, in the 90s, somewhere in the 90s. And it was somewhere local to Houston. And it was definitely we were calling it a C, but I'm thinking it might've been maybe high D. Maybe high D. Yeah.
But it's impressive how you just jumped into a 90 unit deal. I mean, most of us, even I started with duplexes and single family. What made that leap? What was it that attracted you and made you so confident that, you didn't want to go through the growing pains of doing something in a smaller duplex and single family? Because I feel a lot of us start that way. You just jumped right into a 90 unit deal.
I think it's a couple of factors there too. Like I mentioned when we were talking a little before the show, I have a job that I enjoy doing. I'm in the same job that I was at that time too. So I didn't want to have something that took away a lot of time from my current job. I really wanted this is an opportunity to be completely hands off. And when I was undergoing kind of my version of due diligence at the time, which was probably very naive, and I was able to establish that I'm a complete passive partner, and these folks handle all the day to day. They had their own team kind of in place. They're putting one together. So they said, "Hey, you pretty much just write a check on the front end, and then we're gonna give you a big kicker in the end. 3 to 5 years down the line." And that was very attractive to me because I could still do my job, and also my money was working for me, and the returns that they were projecting. I think we're looking around like 14-15%, like an annual, like a cash on cash return too. I forget what the IRR was at the time. And that was pretty good. The market had just kind of started to recover a little bit since, '09 and whatnot. But I think this is a very, it's a stable kind of asset class. And it also got me a toe dipped in the water of multifamily, which I'd always been a big believer in economies of scale. My thought process was from single family, kind of learn the ropes there, and the multifamily from an active perspective. This allowed me kind of a toe dip without having to be so active in there, and then my money could still do some good work for us.
And did they hit those numbers?
They did.
Awesome.
I think that there was some truing up involved there too, since this is the first deal that these folks did. But I knew one of the operators very, very well, and we had a good rapport. Other operator I knew of that person, and he had a very good reputation too. So I was confident in the operators, and I think that they helped out the investors too, and they trued us all to 15%, like a cash on cash per year. Plus, we got out a lot earlier than the 7 to 10 year projection, I think is what he told me in that 30-page document of everything that could go wrong. So we got out in about 2.5 to 3 years, I think, is when we exited.
And do you think you got out too soon? Because that era of the market was still going up.
Maybe, yeah. I think there's definitely some more. Looking back at the time, I was like, oh man, I'm so happy. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
But looking back, and I think maybe there might have been some more meat in the bone.
I mean, still the cash on cash that they were giving you yearly, that's great, man. That was a good deal.
That was a really good deal.
That was a good deal.
These folks didn't have any preferred returns either. I want to make that clear as well. This is kind of more, you put your money in, you get the kicker on the tail end. And they would also give you like cash throughout the year. They had hey guys, here's a distribution, but they didn't call it preferred returns that I remember. But once it's all said and done, we did have a 15% return per year on our cash.
That was a good deal. So that did you do another deal within those 3 years, or once you got the taste of that deal, that's what encouraged you to keep investing passively?
I think I invested in their very next deal before this deal even hit full life cycle. Yeah. We had good communication. I didn't have a ton of questions also too. I didn't ask a lot of nuts and bolts. I was very focused on my job, so I really didn't have a lot of digging in other than just asking these guys questions. How do you do this? Hey, if you have a certain, tenant that has this situation, what does your team do to take care of this? So they're very responsive, very helpful. We did property tours as well. Like they would take us, since it was a local investment, they would take us to the property and let us kind of walk around. And we would either meet up there in our cars, or they had a little bus they would rent and take us over there, and we could talk about, hey, we're going to improve this laundry facility by doing this. We feel like this is going to increase the ROI in this way. Hey, I've set up a time to talk with one of our residents. They're going to tell us kind of how it was before we got here and how it's been after we got here, in their opinion. We're going to try to keep it honest. And the resident kind of shared what they really enjoyed the improvements. They did little things like that really kind of made things more comfortable for investors. One thing that was kind of scary for me too is we would have town hall meetings, which was just, if you can imagine every single investor that has their own specific idea of how they want to run a property, having a voice, that's kind of what those things were. And the funnest part for me was just watching the two guys that taking all the questions, just the sweat, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person's asking this again too. No, we're not going to use this brand of toilet. We're going to use this brand because we get this. It got a very, very detail oriented.
I haven't been in a town hall, but I've been in those interrogations. So I get it. It's and everyone has their argument and everyone has their technique, and sometimes you do learn some stuff is just you don't have the budget for it. So that's the challenge. Now, Chris, what is it that you look for? Do you spend a whole lot of time underwriting these deals personally yourself before you jump into a deal?
I actually kind of look at the area a little bit. And at the time, I was very high on my local area. So at the time, I just kind of looked at the area and said, hey, do you guys think we can make this work? Where's the main kind of sources of our tenant base coming from? And based off of those data points, I pulled the trigger. Nowadays, I do more due diligence around, I try to look at job growth, household growth, what kind of area that we're looking into a little bit more. I do a little bit more due diligence now because I have that level of knowledge. Back then, it was just kind of a very high level of trust in the operator. And the fact that what they said they were going to do in terms of communication and touch points, they executed on. So it was a little bit different mindset for me back then.
Now, do you when you identify an operator, first of all, how do you identify your operators? Because I think that's also a challenge. I know that when your group was going to do the partnership deal with us in Ohio, I know there was a lot of questions being asked of who was going to be the operator and who are these people and where, there's so many questions, because at the end of the day, the operators and the construction, those can really make or break you. What is it that you look for in that operator or in that construction team or in that team that are red flags for you or green lights for you?
So that's a good question, and I hope I have a well thought out enough response that kind of covers everything that I've been thinking about. But typically, I want to make sure someone's a good human being, first of all, and that means I've got some level of trust. Like the folks that I first started off with, it was a very scary first step, but it was kind of like you were going on that journey with people who were already knowledgeable. I've seen these folks execute tons of times in single family. They invested with their family, with their friends, or their one of the guys, his dad had like a lot of money invested with him too, and he told the story about that. He had a very human aspect about him, not like you see some of these folks like these used car salesmen. It wasn't kind of like that kind of feel at all. It was a very, very just down to earth approach. And when we sat down and talked over coffee, he kind of walked me through like the strategy he was doing, and I felt like he was very, very, very tailored to me. So I had a high level of trust for him. So that's one thing I look for. I also like the fact that he was self-professed, very conservative in his approach. He said, "Hey, these projections I'm looking at I want to make sure we pay our investors first. This is very important to me, because if I have you guys' money, I want to make sure that your money is top priority, and then my money comes down there sometime at the end too. But my reputation is the most important, and I want to make sure I take care of you guys." And that hit with me too, because I talked to other folks as well, and they were all talking about returns and how they could do these things in returns. And I don't go for that as much as someone who's a little more conservative and has maybe a higher level of perceived integrity, if you will. So I wanted some folks who were conservative based, and then I wanted, looking backwards, I really want people now too who have gone a full life cycle, because I think it's so easy to get someone, hey, I'm going to buy this apartment complex down the street, and they might not have any experience at all, but they're raising money, and maybe they do a good job too, but I'd rather have a full life cycle, someone who can say, hey, that person's been a little bit battle tested. Maybe they've been through some kind of adverse market situation like COVID. Like everyone who's been through COVID, they've got a pretty big notch on their belts now to say, hey, I survived through COVID. Back in my day, I survived the 2007, 2008 that crash. So those two investors my initial operators, they had both gone through 2007, 2008 and come out on top with single family homes. They had a track record in that area. So I would say, number one, the character of the person. I also try to check references. I've had very good luck checking references for folks to understand how the operator communicates. Do they deliver on what they say they can deliver on? How responsive are they? And what kind of people are they too? Like, I ask a reference of, what do you think about this operator as a person, as a human being? And A, you meet some really cool people through those reference conversations, and B, it just kind of adds a little bit of a human element to them. And granted, Abiel, go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean to go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I want to touch back on that life cycle part, because I think that's really important. And we'll go more into detail into life cycle, not just say real estate cycle, but actually from executing a purchase of a large apartment, taking it from A to Z all the way to the exit of the sale. So I do agree with you. There's a lot of investors out there that haven't gone through a whole life cycle of an investment of an apartment. You might talk to them and they're still in a cycle. They're still within the 2 years of an apartment complex. They still haven't done their exit, or they don't have any experience stabilizing a distressed apartment, or when they bought it, it wasn't distressed, but it became distressed because of COVID. So those are challenges that come in the life cycle of an acquisition. So that is a great point. That is a great point, because I remember when I was looking for partnerships to scale my business as an apartment syndicator and an operator, that was what I wanted in my partnerships. A partner that's gone through that life cycle of buying large apartments and actually exiting successfully. That was my thing. Like, I don't want a partner that's going to, just get done 1 or 2 deals and exited 2 years. I wanted to see the home run deal, how they took it from the beginning to the end, because once you're in the business, there's so much that goes on during that time frame. There is so much operation, there's so much construction, there's so many surprises. Our budgets being blown out the water. Are you staying within budgets? The property management, the drama with the tenants. So there's a lot that goes on in these communities. So to see investors that have taken it from A to Z and exited and been successful, that's a lot of experience. So that's a very important point. So for those listeners out there that are looking to win passively, that is the best thing you could do. Look for operators that, have gone from A to Z and exited successfully. But still, like you said, there might be some good ones that, that haven't done that yet, but doesn't mean they're not going to be successful. But it's a little bit of a higher risk.
It's very, very true. That's one of the things we looked at when we were looking at your team, Abiel, too, is you guys had done full life cycle deals. And that was a good feather in your cap from our perspective and whatnot. So, plus the fact too that you all were willing to jump on phone calls with us and video calls and kind of building that rapport. Some folks kind of try to keep things at arm's length. And again, I'm very big on that human aspect. That might be the wrong way to look at things, but so far it's worked for me. And
now, how much communication do you think is okay for an operator and a passive investor to communicate? Like from your side, now that you're invested in multiple large apartments with different operators, which is the perfect way to communicate with you? And I say this because I'm also taking notes. Because that's always my challenge.
That's a tough one.
How much is good enough communication? How much is overboard? How much is taking so much of your time that you're not becoming a passive anymore? But how much is good enough?
I really like the quarterly updates through email. Like I've got a couple investments that are new builds right now, and that operator just sends me a quarterly updates and some maybe 1 or 2 big pictures of kind of what's going on, and then like a very high level breakdown. And he'll also send me like maybe quarterly financials as well. Here's how much we've taken off the construction loan so far. Here's our estimated completion date. We'll start leasing at this date, this kind of thing. And it's very high level. I like that. Then if I have questions, I can just pick the phone and call, and he'll call me back within 24 hours, which I think is very, very reasonable. I know other operators who send out every single month, and it almost seems like you really kind of have to pack in more information there too. If I'm looking at them as an operator, that'd probably be a little bit more stressful for me and my team, having to put together like a monthly update. So if I've already hired the operator, which I have as an LP, then I'm going to trust that they know what they're doing. And I'm going to trust that they have an issue that happens, they're going to let me know. Other than that, the quarterly email updates will be fine.
Now, is there any deal in particular that just sticks out which it happens, where the investors called you back and said, listen, we need to raise more money. We've gone over budget. Have you been in that situation?
Fortunately, knock on whatever real wood I can find around here, I've not gone through a cap call yet. But is that what you're referring to? Is the cap?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so we have not. There was one of our deals that when there was a really bad hurricane that came through in Houston, which is probably every few years we get one of those, and it just decimated a lot of the area where we had one of our investments. So I was pretty scared that we might have lost maybe a lot of the investment at that point. But as the Lord would have it, the apartment complex next to us took a lot of damage and pushed people over into our complex, which didn't sustain hardly any damage.
Oh, wow.
So we were very fortunate in that regard. There's also a few litigation issues going on with that too. I still can't say I understand what really happened, but the operators were very forthcoming about communication. Say, hey, don't worry about this. Here's kind of what's going on. Here's how we're resolving it. but this is not something, this happens every once in a while. This is not out of the routine. And he really kind of put our fears at ease, because you see, litigation like that.
Is that the reason you started diversifying into other states?
Absolutely. Less hurricanes.
I always, we like to diversify. We like to pick our states, our cities, even though it's easy sometimes to invest in your backyard because you could just drive to your asset and see it on a regular basis. But, that's the beauty of this business. And that's why that's one of the things that drew me to it, was the size of the business allows it to run on its own with the right team, the right management, where you don't need to be on top of your property. It allows you to invest out of state. Allows you to invest in communities and cities where their economy is growing. There's driving traffic. Like right now, I was just doing a study on economic growth and migration patterns after COVID. And it's impressive. Like there's some cities that I just never thought they would experience the migration patterns that they are. Tennessee's hot on the market. And you can now diversify and invest in these cities as a passive investment, which is great. Tennessee's right now the #1 state for migration. If you go to the U-Haul and those moving companies, they have the most accurate data. It's pretty cool. So it allows you to diversify and target certain cities and get out of your backyard. And I had the same issue in South Florida like you do with hurricanes. So yeah, definitely want to have all your eggs in one basket. So I get that.
I think you guys win in that regard too. You guys have a little more hurricane issues than we do. So hats off to you.
Yeah. No, we actually underwrite deals now. The first thing that we ask is, do we have a wind and flood zone? Because insurance is skyrocketing on that. So yeah, it's definitely something to look after.
On the diversification piece too, it's kind of nice to. I don't have to know all those things. Like if I want to invest with you in Florida, you're an operator that's very well seasoned in that area, right? So I don't need to go in. I can look at the overall high level stats, job growth, household growth, whatever things are important to me on a high level. But the ins and outs. So hey, if I'm in this area, I need flood insurance, or I might need hurricane insurance, or a high level of insurance because there's more susceptible to damage. And I wouldn't know those things, but I can rely on you as an operator, and I can sleep a lot better at night because I'm not thinking in my head, is there something that I missed? I don't have to worry about that. I know Abiel's got that covered with his team. So it's very helpful to diversify. It's a good thing.
A lot goes into that. That's another part of being an operator, is that there's a lot going on in the back door. I have a whole podcast on how much time we spent underwriting deals and identifying markets. A lot goes into it. It's a competitive business. There's a lot of competition, a lot of money out there for this asset class, especially after COVID. And, a lot of underwriting, a lot of time to going through marketing packages. So yes, you benefit from that. And you get to come into the deal when all that's been hammered out and get to see the high level numbers, which what you just said. And I know that I'm always putting that stuff in front of you and Goit in your group, guys, to check out this deal. But I only, just for those operators out there, don't put a bunch of stuff in front of them. Just put the stuff in front of them that you are confident that you're taking down. Just wasting your time. Your time is very valuable also. What would you say, Chris, if you were to go back that 2012 when you started and put yourself in a passive or new investor coming into the business, what advice would you give them going back to the 2012, Chris?
I think looking back, there was summer recruiter. You don't go to school for recruiting. I've never heard of recruiting really until I kind of got in the industry. So to use that as a parallel or an analogy, then the same thing with multifamily. You really don't hear too much about multifamily, but once you get in it, then that's all you hear about. There's so many great resources out there online now that are free. There's networking events. I chose to go the mentorship route where I had a paid mentorship for the single family, which led me to multifamily. So I would say for someone,
paid mentorship? Sorry to cut you off.
It was a company called Lifestyles Unlimited here in Houston. And I thought they did a phenomenal job. They're very good in terms of single family. They've also got a multifamily branch as well, which is just something that I chose not to do. I chose the single family route at the time. But looking back since then, I would say there's just so many more available resources than I had ever imagined. And even looking through websites today, these people have been around since 2010, 2008,
Yeah,
producing
sure.
content, so I would say jump in both feet first and just meet as many people as you can, have conversations, and slowly those light bulbs will start going off.
Correct. Yeah, and things will start making sense to you, or you just reach to a point that the business might not be for you, like how it was for you to single family. Like I have conversations with everyone about multifamilies, and they're just individuals that they like the single family asset. So
Sure.
you got to fight what fits your personality and your goals. And I'll tell you what, though, once you start searching these topics and you start reading and, like you said, start looking at mentors in the business, I'm a big promoter of YouTube videos. I learned a lot through there. Once I identified 4 or 5 top individuals in the business, I just start following and seeing what they do and how they do it and get different perspectives. And I know you invested in one of the deals with Joel Fairless you mentioned to me, which his book is great.
Yep.
Yeah, that one for me was a great read. So a lot of props to what he put together there, and it's easy to understand. That would catch you up in the business. And also, once you start doing that, I think the algorithms of social media platforms just start bombarding you with other individuals. So they'll do that work for you.
You can have too much information.
Yeah. Then it gets overloaded. And then you think everyone is doing the business.
Right.
What happens to me, I'm like, every time I open my social media, it's like, oh my God, is the whole world doing multifamilies?
Right.
It's just coming at me from everywhere. I always ask every listener this question, and I love to hear that perspective. And what does financial freedom mean to you, Chris?
Actually, so I took some notes before I call Abiel, so I'm gonna make sure I reference my notes here because I gotta think about this question a lot.
Yeah, I change it all the time. For me, financial freedom changes all the time.
It really does, and that's kind of the tricky thing about that question is you could wake up one day and it just means something a little bit different. So I'm sure you're similar in the sense that you set goals and then kind of check those goals, but throughout the year, some of those goals change. So the one that I had right now is it kind of has 2 phases. So the first one is creating a passive income stream so you don't have to rely on a paycheck, like from a W-2 job to cover expenses. I think that's kind of a nice milestone to hit in the sense that you've been able to exercise the discipline, the financial savviness needed to cover your bills. Then the second part of that equation is really being able to utilize your passive income stream to cover your lifestyle. If you want to, travel, see the world, that kind of thing, or maybe you want to, do something to help somebody out, those kind of things. And you at that point, I think we can really say we're financially free when your lifestyle is covered. But that's not just the end goal. It's still part of the journey.
Yeah. It's finding that discipline. I like that you said that discipline and that education part to create that financial freedom through passive investments, where they create that funnel of money that cover your lifestyle. That's definitely a great goal to have, as a dream. But it seems that the target number always changes. We tend to get ourselves into things and bills and stuff, and dreams sometimes they get bigger, and why not? Why not? Chris, I know that you're slowly dabbling into becoming passive to active, and I would like for any listener that's listening to this that's a passive investor to be able to reach out to, because sometimes they only get to talk to operators and syndicate. They only sometimes they want to talk to you to get your perspective. You have a different perspective than what I do. So is there a way a listener that's interested in jumping into business could get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I've got a email, phone number. So my email is texag, TEXAG02 REI @gmail.com. And then my telephone number is 832-835-1055.
All right. So for those listening out there, I'll drop the link on the YouTube video. Chris, I enjoyed this conversation and your perspective of the business from your end. And I'm looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to doing more business with you.
Thanks for having me, Abiel. We'll appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Good to be on here.
Bye-bye.